Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 43 of the North Star podcast. Today is part 2, where we talk about nutrition, the basics, timing. This is a 3-part series. If you haven't listened to episode 42, where we talked about the psychology, the mindset of nutrition, and the basics and things like that, then go take a look at that first before going here. Also, 2, we will be continuing this series with, again, like I said, part 3, which will be supplements and peptides, which we will talk about in part 3. So, again, what we're going to start here off is just the basic nutrition, timing, things like that. We went a little bit about foundation in the episode, the part 1 episode, where we kind of talk about, basically protein, veggies, fruits, water, things like that. But we're going to go more in depth today. Mm-hmm. I'll just start it off by just talking a little bit about the phases of nutrition. We're looking at specific goals. So if you are, trying to set a fat loss goal, muscle gain goal, recomp, most of the times, most people are going to just start with the foundation, which I like to call as just your restoration phase.
Yep.
So we look at restoring things that are lacking in your nutrition. I'm a true believer in adding to someone's diet rather than taking away. A lot of times people look at what can I take away first, but I always try to look at, okay, when I see someone's eating, what is there that's missing and what can I add to improve it? Because that's going to be probably the best way to look at it. It's also a less restrictive mindset outlook. If you're always looking at what can I reduce, what can I take out, it's going to be really hard long term to be successful because you're always trying to look at something taking away. Or if we can add something, it'll make it a little bit better. So
one more thing to touch up on that. I think, like you mentioned, by simply always thinking about removing stuff, you might cause another problem that you might not even have known that you could get, right? Versus adding can always lead to solutions.
No, that's a good point, right? Because you might be someone who's already unhealthy, and then you start to reduce something that makes you even more unhealthier.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, what can we add to make you healthier? And this might be a controversial statement, but I actually truly believe that some people are too unhealthy to start losing body fat right away. And I know that might sound really controversial because losing body fat will create a healthier individual. But what I mean by that is sometimes, actually most of the times when you're starting out, you'll probably start to gain muscle, lose a bit of body fat, but you'll become a healthier individual because you're adding more nutrients, things like that, more vitamins and minerals, which will then inherently just make you a healthier person anyways. So if you're someone who's like, I need to lose body fat and become healthier, well, yes, that's going to help. But if that's your sole only focus without looking at the whole picture first, it's going to really create a mindset or view of not having a outlook that will create sustainable change, right? So
that's great insight.
Yeah. I think going on this though, I want to talk a little bit about the phases: maintenance, recomp, fat loss. Everyone says it, you got to create a calorie deficit. What does that look like? Well, everyone has a maintenance calorie that everyone consumes every single day to lose body fat over a long period of time. You have to reduce those calories or eat under those maintenance calories. That's the simplest terms of doing it. If you're someone who's beginning and is untrained and has never eaten enough protein, all these things, you can actually start to gain muscle and lose body fat at the same time, which would be considered recomp. Most beginners will be in that stage. That stage will end at some point. But I always say it's like, take as much as you in of that phase, because
that's the best phase.
It's the best phase, man. When you can gain muscle and lose body fat at the same time. And that's actually another thing. If you're someone who's starting out and you are not seeing the scale coming down, but your clothes are fitting better, you see more definition, it means you are gaining muscle and losing body fat at the same time. And it's funny because people are saying like muscle weighs more on the scale. And I'm like, well, it's the same concept of feathers and a brick. Like if you have 1 pound of feathers and 1 pound of a brick, the feathers are going to take up more volume than the brick, but it still weighs 1 pound.
Yeah.
So if you gain 1 pound of muscle and you lose 1 pound of body fat, your weight on the scale will stay the same, but your body composition will look different, right? And that's something that somebody really needs to understand and know when they're going about their goals too. So that's just about phases of nutrition.
Yep.
You want to touch a little bit on, timing and stuff like that, like, of nutrition and looking at different ways to implement it and
For
things
sure.
like that?
Yeah, biggest thing I had to learn as a person who, for the longest time, never ate breakfast. For years, I didn't eat breakfast. Quick little story. It was because growing up, my mom heard this superstition and she saw my cousin. He used to put raw eggs into his milkshake every morning, every breakfast. And my family side's like relatively tall. They're all about like 6 foot. And
Yeah.
like my mom, my dad are like the shorter side of the family. And one of my cousins who had like a huge growth spurt, like 5'7" to like 6'4". For a year, his mom and my aunt would put like 2 raw eggs, mango puree, and just milk, and he'd just make him chug that every morning. So my aunt told my mom. So my mom was like, "All right, Ekam's going to do that too." So she used to make me do the same thing, and it built a really negative relationship where I would just chug these milkshakes, go to school, and I hated breakfast. I hated eggs, and I just would skip out breakfast. And it took me a long time to rewire that side of the brain and to understand, because I'm a person who likes to work out if I can first thing in the morning, but within the first like 3 hours of my morning. And this is a foundation for anybody whenever they are trying to exercise. You should plan your meals, right? You need to get some sort of fuel in before yourself, especially if you're training something like high intensity or weights. So ideally what I like to do is try to get around a good amount of carbs and protein. And I like to front load that in my mornings and try to get most of my macronutrients and all the stuff I really need first thing in the morning. So later at night, I can, enjoy myself, obviously still track just to make sure I'm in my ranges. Some examples would be like a great one. I think you mentioned this as well. Rice cakes. If you have something like rice cakes, something that's a simple carb, something that's going to digest quick, will give you a short burst of energy right before your workout. You could do this typically anywhere from 2 hours before going to work out. I realized it made the biggest difference. I used to work out and I remember hit super intense leg days, not eat. And dude, I used to feel like vomiting after the gym, be super dizzy on the drive back. It was not a good thing. And then going on to that, I think post-workout recovery, right? You got to replenish. In our muscles, we store this thing called glycogen, right? Which comes from carbs and glucose. And if we want to jumpstart our recovery, we would want to have some sort of post-workout meal as well, right? And ideally, that would be hitting your protein goals and going for your carbs. Now, does it necessarily have to be that? No, right? If you're following a different type of diet, keto, Atkins, it doesn't have to be that. But typically, protein will always be the best. And thermogenetics, right? Protein also burns more as you digest it, which if your goal is fat loss, is amazing. That's going to keep you full.
Yeah, most times like 0.8, 1 gram per pound of body weight.
Yep.
And I got to be very careful saying that because
If
there's someone who's 300 pounds and they eat 300 grams of protein and you're used to eating 50, that's a lot.
Oh.
That's a big difference. So you got to be really careful. If you're someone who eats low protein, start by slowly adding protein until you get to a goal protein that you're trying to hit. We're not going to go in the nitty gritty of it all because, it's very long, meticulous conversation and it's very person specific. I can't, tell you exactly what you need in this exact moment. I would need a little bit more information, of course. But even too, meal timing's great. And I'm glad we're touching on it. But also too, for a lot of times people this is a more later on thing
for sure.
too, right? If you're an athlete and you're listening,
that's
make
perfect.
sure you understand meal timing because that's going to be important just for performance sake, recovery, whatever. But most times, everyday people, a lot of times is just setting that foundation first and knowing kind of exactly where you stand when it comes to how much you're eating and things like that. The easiest way to know that is track everything you eat, and I'm telling you everything. From what you drink to a spoonful of this, handful of this. You need to know what you're doing. You need to know your habits. You need to understand those so that you actually are aware of what you're doing first. Once you know where you're at with your calories, there's so many different tracking calorie things. We actually have one. No, I'm gonna give a plug. Fat Loss Guide. You plug in what your weight is, you plug in your stats, you get all that, punches out, gives you your macro, it gives you your calories, macros, things like that. So that's a way of knowing as well. But all in all, I would say biggest things like Ekam said, getting some carbs, getting some protein before, after workout's going to be good. There's a lot of different things. Another plug, we have a recipe book. Yeah. It gives you protein, carbs, fats, gives you easy, simple meals, high protein. Ekam touched on front loading. That's another big thing. So front loading your nutrients at the beginning of your day. Too many people try to catch up later on.
Yeah.
If you have to try to hit 100 grams of protein, it's 8 o'clock at night. Like, you could do it, but good luck. Like, most
your sleep
people,
is going to get affected as well.
yeah,
right?
like a lot of things are going to get affected, and it's going to be very hard. So all in all, just be aware of what you're doing is going to be the biggest thing. Tracking your calories first, knowing what you were eating. Like, you might, there's so many studies showing that people overestimate or underestimate by like 20-30%. Like, and that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot. So if someone's like, well, I'm not losing weight or I'm not losing body fat, well, most of the time it's because you're eating too much, but you're like, I'm only eat 1,000 calories, but you also forgot to, track the cooking oil. You forgot to track the glass of juice that you had. You forgot to track the handful of this. You forgot to do all these things. And I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing here is just making sure that you're understanding what you're consuming on a day-to-day basis so that you're able to inherently like build off of those things so that you're getting to a point where you're starting to see the nutrition and you're viewing it as a whole for yourself, because your amount of calories that you need are going to change person to person. So all in all, I think those are some good points there when it comes to that. Do you have anything that you want to go over about that a little bit more before we
I think we went through a lot of the common mistakes and fixes, right? Like we said, skipping meals and then overeating, right? At night, and overemphasizing your timing for sure is not going to fix if you're already under or overeating calories, right? That would come first, and then the timing and stuff like that would be something you'd build on into the next phase, right? And we talked about fasted and the trade-offs. One thing I want to touch on is golden rules.
Yeah, golden rule in the way of just what I would say, like, golden rules when it comes down to nutrition overall. I kind of want to say a little bit more in regards to foundation with the golden rules at the end. There's a little bit more I just want to touch on real quick before we and go into that. But the one thing is too is like common mistakes or things that we tend to see. Again, we talked about under eating or overeating calories and not knowing. I think too, one thing that I see is people tend to get to a point where they're eating, like they're eating to a point where it's too late. Like, they've had like 4 hours where they haven't eaten, and then at that point what happens is they're starving. So they want to eat everything, right? And I think that at the end of the day is like the biggest misconception. So you got to make sure that your meal structure is going to look different. I might be able to go 4 hours without eating. The other person might not, right? They might need to eat every couple hours, right? So it just depends on the meal size as well. So that's also something that I really would say, like, people want to look at when they're going. I just wanted to touch on that before we get into that last part there. So
I know we mentioned psychology as well in the last episode, but I think when it comes to tracking calories, it's once you start implementing that, it can build such a healthy relationship with food. It's another amazing thing, right? Is because, like, let's say you do hit your calories, you front load, you're like, I hit my protein, I hit all my macros, I hit my micronutrients, right? And I have this many calories left. It's like you can still enjoy those foods that you, right? It's like, I tell everybody that I work with is, hey, it's all about planning. Planning comes first, right? If you don't plan, you plan to fail. And then secondly is, once you have achieved your plan, right? The actions have been done, is that you can actually, if your plan's good enough, right? And you know how to eat your favorite foods, whether it's eating it, buying it out, or making it yourself, you can build such a healthy relationship. And I think tracking is really that first step of understanding that, because once you understand it and understand the processes, you're gonna avoid those mistakes, right?
Well, and that just comes down to like you said, the foundation, but also being prepared ahead,
For sure.
The classic Sunday meal prep kind of thing, right? Where it's like, you're having one day where you're taking the time to, meal prep and get everything ready for the week, right? Doesn't have to be extreme. Meal prep can take maybe 2 hours, but you have, let's say, 8 meals for the week, right? You're less likely to go grab fast food. You're less likely to go do those things because you have something already prepared. And in that way, what's nice is it really gives you the opportunity to have the point where you can start to like build off of that, right? So it's if you start your day off with a high protein, high veggie, high fruit, you're more likely to later on make better choices as well. Where if you do the reverse, if you wait till the end of the day, you're gonna try to get as many calories as you in because you're starving, you're doing these things, and that's just hard, man. That I've been there. Like I've been like, oh, I didn't
Same
plan
here.
enough, and I'm like trying to figure out. Now now I have a lot of education around it, so it's like I can. For me now, at least I can last minute stuff because I know like, okay, I know that has that. I know how that has that. I know how that has that. No, I don't get as not that I freak out. I just don't get as anxious or worried about it because I'm like, man, I know this has this. Like I've done it for so many years. But you get to that point.
Yeah, because
right?
it's a
you
life
have
thing.
to build to that point, right? But that's a big one. Any other little ones that you want to talk about?
Super overrated, but having a colorful plate.
Okay.
I think super big thing, and this is something I was learning in my kinesiology class, is that, especially I wouldn't say the American diet, but way diet's been a lot recently, is that people veggies, right? It's like it's so simple, right? You need your veggies, you need your fruits, right? It's a super easy indicator to see if health is your measurement and your goal is checking that you have a healthy plate and a colorful plate. Supplements we'll talk about in the next one.
Supplements we'll talk in the next part. I think, going off if somebody's looking to like what is a serving size or what is a portion, hand size, if you take your hand, if you don't have a food scale, the palm of your hand is usually roughly around 3 to 4 ounces, obviously depending on someone's hand. I have a bigger hand than maybe the person beside me, whatever, right? So everyone's different, right? So, but most of the times the palm of your hand is about 3 or 4 ounces of protein. So if you're looking for a portion size, females usually maybe one or two, depending. Most males, 2 palms are probably going to be good in a meal. Fist, if you take your fist, one fist, 1 serving of veggies. Same kind of thing. Females, maybe 1 to 2. Males, most times 2 to 3, maybe. Fruits, I always go by 1 cup of berries. So berries, watermelon, grapes, whatever. Or 1 fruit, 1 banana, 1 apple, 1 whatever. That's usually a serving. That's how I would go based off nutrients. We're not going to get into the depth of carbs and fats, but carbs are going to be good for energy, performance, mood. If you're not eating, again, if somebody's diabetic, that's a different conversation. If you are diabetic, then you can ask us more in-depth questions about that. That might change just on your carbohydrate intake. Fats are going to be for hormonal health, general function, just also too, like, they taste amazing.
I was going to mention that too. I'm like, fruits are delicious. Dude, like I can't go without making like my favorite thing right now is yogurt parfait bowls. Dude, I play around with different fruits all the time and it's so good. Like, and they fill you up too, right? It's
and I think a lot of times people think that I say quote unquote healthy food because healthy food to me is just food, like it's more nutrient dense, more nutrient dense food. It can actually taste good, right? Like it doesn't have to just be like boiled chicken, white rice with nothing on it, and steamed broccoli with no seasoning, no nothing, right?
You're doing a dishonor to the chicken. Honestly,
plug to the Up North cookbook. So go check that out. But no, at the end of the day, man, it's looking at those things, and overall, I would say those are probably the main golden rules when you're looking at timing, nutrients, where to start, and how to go about it. But is there any other things that you want to touch on?
We covered through a lot of the rules. The only thing that I can think of is, hey man, you can't out-train a bad diet as well, right? You build that foundation, you're going to reap what you sow, and everything will just, as you mentioned, like habits will stack. You learn how to meal prep. Your sleep's going to be better. Your food time is going to be better. Your relationship with food's going to be better. And that's what it's about, right? Because food's not going anywhere, right? You still have to eat food for the rest of your life.
I like the example of like, people throw the word metabolism and all these different things. My metabolism's slow, this, that. It's like, well, you can rebuild your metabolism. You can do these things. And in all honesty, in this day and age, you want a higher metabolism. You want to be able to consume more calories and be able to maintain your weight, because I can go walk across the street and go dummy 1,000 calories in chocolate bars. That didn't happen 50, 60 years
Yep.
ago, right? Like you weren't able to do that, right? So you want to be someone that has some muscle on your frame. I don't mean bodybuilder, right? Like
Yeah.
having a little bit more muscle, you're going to have a better metabolism, faster metabolism. You're going to be able to eat more. You're going to be able to enjoy things. You're not going to have to
So that,
worry so much about, if you're going out for drinks or you're having your favorite meal,
yeah.
right? Like you don't have to worry as much when you have a higher metabolism. And I think that's something that's also something to reflect about as well. So, but yeah, man,
Great
I think
talk.
this was a good, part two. Again, like I said, people might not be used to these shorter episodes, but we really just want to make it where the information is in a shorter form. And we want you to ask questions. We want you to, inquire about, these things more in depth because, like I said, we're here to help. And yeah, I just, want to thank everyone for listening to episode 43 of the North Star Podcast, part 2, where we're talking about nutrition. Make sure to check out part 3 when it comes out. But yeah, thanks so much, everyone, for listening, and have a great rest of your day.